Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you?
Welcome, everybody, to this week's Clean Leather Baseball Podcast. I'm Mike Olshin. Kevin Schneider is away this week, but we are here with a fantastic guest. We kind of hit the national stage here and bring in our friend Mike Rooney, ESPN and college baseball premier analyst, D1Baseball.com, former player himself at Notre Dame, longtime coach at Arizona State, assistant coach, and Runes, welcome.
Thanks, Olsh. I don't know about premier analyst, but I'll say definitely college baseball's baldest analyst. So for that, I definitely am winning. No question.
My hairline is getting close, so we're good on it. I just bring people in where mine is a little bit better.
That's right. That's right. Well done.
So it's always college baseball season as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
It's not the spring yet, but we've got fall ball. We just finished a great summer season with our ACBL teams. But let's talk about what you get to do. Since your coaching career. What are you doing now? What's the ESPN assignment entail, and some of the other things that you get to do to bring this game that we both care a lot about to America.
Yeah, it's funny. It's just funny how life works, right, Olsh? I mean, I just my dream was to be a Division I college baseball coach, like a head coach, and I played for Pat Murphy, and Murph has this huge reputation, and he was like the Bobby Knight back in the day, and I thought I would be Coach K, right? Like I would be version 2.0, and then it's just ironically being from the Philly area, I think is part of how I ended up in a broadcasting version of college baseball. But so the ESPN stuff has been an incredible blessing, right? I would go talk to people about college baseball for free, let alone to get paid to do it. And, now of course it's very seasonal. Last year, my first game was in February, but typically your first game is end of March. And then, you go through the College World Series, and then, I jumped on with D1 baseball last October, so almost a year right now, and that's been awesome. Aaron Fitt and Kendall Rogers have been longtime friends.
Job they do, yeah.
Oh, they're incredible, and so getting to, it's just another way to stay involved. Getting to call coaches and write about teams and podcasts and stuff like that. It's been I still have a real day job and all that stuff, but it's, as far as my college baseball hobby, those are two really cool homes as far as getting to stay involved in the game.
So you wanted to be the Coach K 2.0, but you ended up being the Dick Vitale 2.0.
That's right. Knock off Dick Vitale. That's right.
Yeah.
That's a great analogy.
And it's amazing how few people know that he was a coach. He was,
right. In the NBA even. Yeah, college and NBA. Crazy, right?
Yeah, that's right. And imagine him coaching in the NBA now. It's just but looking ahead then to 2022, unprecedented time really for a couple of reasons, as far as, well, I shouldn't say unprecedented, but certainly in recent times as far as the talent in college baseball. One thing that COVID brought upon college baseball is just more talent for a longer period of time.
Right.
But if you had to, again, we're 5 months before the season start, but give us a couple of teams that are, everybody can, I could sit here and say Vanderbilt and go down the SEC and, I say, I got 6 out of the Omaha teams right this far before the season, right?
Yeah.
A couple of teams that maybe are a step below that could get to Omaha if things break well, but wouldn't be like, what the common, give us that kind of one step below sleeper teams that for whatever reason kind of are on your radar right now for 2022.
Yeah, and I would say also, I'll comment on the talent part. I mean, it is a really exciting time in college baseball when you think about hey, youth baseball just keeps growing and growing, travel baseball, and I think the players have more repetitions than they did 25 years ago, clearly. And then you think about, Rob Manfred, obviously he receives a lot of criticism, but one thing that I would say is a real positive from where you and I sit is, Rob Manfred has looked at the number of high school players that sign professional contracts and has just, and now, of course, I'm speaking for him, but he's basically said that's a mistake. Like this is, if you think about pre-pandemic, those previous 5 years, we were averaging about 140 high school players signing pro contracts per year. And then, you go back 10, 15 years, it was upwards about 200. And,
Right.
think about that compared to football and basketball. Football, clearly the number is 0. Basketball, it's also 0 because they have to go to, so, like, I don't know. I'm super biased towards college baseball, but if you told me, hey, there are 25 high school kids in America that are ready for the rigors of minor league baseball, I could buy that. I'd be even okay with 50, but 150, 140, no way. Like those are, so anyway, but I love that every family gets to make their own decision. But here's the point I'm trying to get to is 2 years ago with the pandemic shortened draft, we only had about 65 high school players sign pro contracts. Last year we had 90, and I do think the 2021 draft is is probably a more realistic model for what we're headed towards. And so that just pushes more talent to college baseball, and the pandemic, there's just less opportunities in professional baseball. So I think that helps the college game. Now your question was about teams that have started to pique my interest for 2022.
Yeah, I did my usual throw 3 questions into one.
It's great. I love it. Yes. Yeah. So I would say, in the non-obvious ones, I'll tell you, if we're going to be Northeast centric, a program that really is interesting to me is Connecticut. Now I thought they had a chance to do some damage last year, and they did not play well in the Notre Dame regional and the South Bend regional.
Right.
Now Notre Dame was just, incredible in that regional.
Yeah.
So that probably had more to do with, but Connecticut continues. They got banged up on the draft a little bit, but they've done a great job with transfers. That's a program that is top of mind for me.
And Reggie Crawford's just a highlight film by himself.
Seriously. Yeah. And he's from Scranton Wilkes-Barre, right? I think he's from that area.
He's local. Yeah. We stretch the boundary on New Jersey sometimes to take in guys.
That's right.
Yeah.
Somebody was talking about Reggie Crawford recently, and I didn't realize he was from Scranton Wilkes-Barre, and I was thinking, man, please be from the eastern part of the state. I need him to be an Eagles fan. And then, but Scranton Wilkes-Barre, those kids tend to be New York fans. Like they're not that close to Philly. So I would say also, right now we're starting to get recruiting questionnaires back in where you're figuring out, okay, who came to campus. I'll give you another team that's under the radar. I wouldn't say they're like an Omaha sleeper, but Wake Forest is a team that 2017, they went to game 3 of a super regional, lost to Florida, who won the whole thing. And then they've just really struggled the last couple of years, and they had a really, really terrible year for their standards last year. But man, they had a great draft. And so they're really interesting. But I would say, it's right now is interesting. Like we're still, kids are just getting on campus. We're just starting to hear about fall scrimmages. And it's I feel like the next 3 months is when we're starting to figure out, like, okay, who are these teams? But I'll put a punctuation on it with this also. It really is wide open. I think there's a lot of years, like going into last year, Florida was the unanimous number 1, and it was a non-conversation. Now it didn't turn out that way, clearly, but this year, like Texas there's some obvious strength on that roster, but I feel like we're in for a really wide open year in college baseball in 2022.
And that just makes it that much better, right? I mean,
no doubt.
The predictability or the regionality, if I'm probably making up a word with that, just especially up here in the Northeast, I feel like it's such a Southern sport, or Western, right? Or Southwestern where you are, that people maybe have slept on. I mean, New Jersey is a great baseball state, as you know. Usually it's the high school talent, but I guess programs like Rutgers should be back on the rise this year. Ryder had a great story beating Fairfield to win the MAC last year. After Fairfield made the top 25, and NJIT, there's another one that just from the literally almost nothing that we remember when we were younger, to struggling through a bunch of no-name conferences that don't even exist anymore, then kind of being misplaced in the A-Sun for a couple years, and now where they really should be up in the America East. What a great story they were last year to win that conference, to play a great regional in Fayetteville and get Jersey's first win in 10 years.
Yeah, and I would say, gosh, there's so much to that question. I would say, Ulsh, the first thing is there are a couple things out there that I think the cold weather schools, it could potentially help them. For instance, the one-time transfer rule. I know the mid-majors are anxious about that because, look at John. I mean, now Hartford's going to Division III, but John Thrasher, is the America East Player of the Year, and now he's going to Kentucky. There is going to be that. There's going to be the pilfering of good players. But I also think that, hey, the baseball in New Jersey, the state of New Jersey, has been good for a long, long time. But the problem is for Rutgers and NJIT and Rider is those kids are going south, right? They're going to Virginia, they're going to Vanderbilt, they're going to North Carolina, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now with the one-time transfer rule, which is the way it was 20 years ago, those kids can come back and Steve Owens can put those kids into a Rutgers lineup right away. They don't have to go to junior college for a year and then see what happens. So I think that will help those guys. I wrote recently, there's an idea called 32 hosts, which would change the way we do the NCAA tournament a little bit. I think that would help the cold weather schools a lot, where they'd get a chance to host in the postseason, or they'd have more of a chance to do it. But I would say the three programs you mentioned, if Rutgers baseball was a stock, I would be buying all of it right now. Like I am all in on Steve Owens. This guy has won everywhere. I think that was a perfect hire for those guys. We know Rutgers can be very, very good in baseball. We've seen it and not too long ago when they were in the Big East. And hey, I mean, it's easy to forget Rutgers last year swept Nebraska, who turned out to be, Nebraska's another team that gave Arkansas all they could handle.
Yeah.
No question. And NJIT, that was a really cool story. Now, I am biased there. Robbie McClellan, their head coach, I recruited him. He was our guy at Arizona State. He's from Southwest Kansas, a really small town called Liberal, Kansas. Pitched in junior college. We brought him to Arizona State. He was outstanding, and then started his coaching career. He coached junior college baseball out here. And so to see Robbie and what NJIT did, hey, and you probably watched it all. I mean, they were a nightmare for Arkansas in game one of that regional. And I'm telling you, this may be me kind of getting over my skis, but I felt like what NJIT did, really pressing Arkansas, where Arkansas had to go to Kevin Kopps in like the fourth inning of that NJIT. Yeah. And Arkansas never got right in the postseason. Like they just kind of wobbled. Nebraska really pressed them in that regional at the end.
Game,
yeah. So, and then it was cool to see Dr. Barry Davis and Ryder get in the tournament. And so, yeah, hey, if the New Jersey colleges can keep more of the New Jersey players from going south, or get them on their way back north, if maybe it doesn't work out going south, I think those teams will just continue to improve.
And we forgot the team that really had the lock on great players in the area when you were playing is Seton Hall.
Yeah.
That's another, they've got that North Jersey and Shepard has been there for forever in charge of that program. But, probably not the days of being able to have Mo Vaughn and Craig Biggio and guys like that anymore.
No kidding.
But, that's another team that in the Big East that hopefully can give UConn a run for the money this year.
Yeah, and the Big East is a really underrated league in baseball, and especially with UConn coming back in there. I mean, this is crazy. UConn has been to the NCAA tournament 7 of the last 11 years. And so, that's just a dynamite program. And then Creighton's an excellent program. St. John's clearly is a team that's been in a super regional in the last 10 years. And so, Villanova the last couple of years has been much improved. So I agree. Seton Hall's got a really good tradition. And again, I think the one-time transfer, we'll see how it plays out. I really do think that's going to help some of those schools with the kids coming back north after they've tried playing college baseball in the South.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a hidden benefit or hidden thing that people hadn't really considered. Um, you get the kind of law of unintended consequences coming in, and
Yeah.
hopefully that's a big one because you see the schools that can have taken advantage of that have done very well. Any urge or feeling on your part to ever get back into coaching, or are you pretty much happy with where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I love what I'm doing, right? And so first of all, you always miss coaching, right? Like the thing about coaching is like the relationships you have with your players, the just constant conversations with other coaches, like of course I miss that dearly, right? Like that is what it's all about. And so that part I will always miss. But I'll tell you what I don't miss is I don't miss the lifestyle of coaches because it's hard, like especially if you're a college coach, recruiting is, really wild. I mean, it's 24/7 without exaggeration. I mean, you just the recruiting never stops. And then, you know, even high school coaching was super fun, maybe the most fun I've ever had in coaching, but being a high school coach has never been harder. And
Yeah.
so I've always said, even when I was coaching, my dream job was be a Division III head coach and then be a manager in the Cape Cod League. That would be the perfect mix of have a job that promotes sanity and then go somewhere in the summer and coach those big leaguers. But I would say this may sound a little corny, Olsh, but sometimes I think just God intercepts and just says, hey, like, I know this is what you think you want to do, but this is what I need you to do. And so I do feel called to do what I'm doing in college baseball. Like I miss coaching, but getting to be kind of a mouthpiece for college baseball, I think
Mm.
suits me, and it's been really fulfilling. And it so much so that I'm certainly not up at night, thinking about how do I get back into coaching, or I miss coaching this much. I feel really fulfilled, and I love what I'm doing right now.
If you ever get tired of that Arizona weather, we can bring you back and get some ACBL spots for you if you're interested. We
There
can
you go.
make that
Hey,
work.
every summer I sneak back to Seattle City to see my family. They go to Seattle for 2 weeks. So anything that gets me back closer to Seattle City, count me in.
That's right. That's right. Now two directions from that last thing you said and the last part. But first of all, um, recruiting obviously has never been crazier.
Hmm.
As crazy as I'm sure it was for you as an assistant coach. Now, just reading, you had a great 3-part series at d1baseball.com. Anybody who hasn't seen it should get over and click on that after they're done watching this, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, but the one that really hit me, and I've talked about it here with Kevin, is the recruiting piece and the recruiting calendar, and just the whole concept of it's nice that coaches can't establish or initiate contact with the player till September 1st of their junior year, but you look at the top 500 and probably 75% of them are magically committed by that point.
Yep.
And again, the commitment doesn't mean anything because it's a verbal, but just I guess from a coach's perspective, also from a outsider's perspective, how ridiculous is it that, I mean, obviously it's running through the travel programs and third parties, but to put so much time into recruiting ninth graders that haven't even begun really their high school career and that development, how ridiculous is that? And B, how often does that lead to, either mismatch on skills or mismatch on fit personality, or what happens when the coach leaves?
Yeah, I would say, gosh, there's so many layers to this whole shit. It's like, 20 years ago when I was at Arizona State, we, the rules were similar, but it was just a different marketplace. And so we didn't have any contact with these players outside of if they came to a camp until
Right.
July 1st before their senior year of high school. And I'm telling you, even recruiting back then, where you're basically recruiting one grade at a time, it was super stressful. I mean,
Yeah.
it kept you up at night. It was now these coaches are recruiting 5 grades at once. And, think about it. Like we have more than 30 players in the class of 2025 that have already verbally committed to a college.
Yeah,
Those
the
kids,
first month of ninth grade right now.
yeah, one of those kids, and I'm going to use Stanford. I'm not being critical of Stanford. Remember, this is nobody's fault per
Right.
se. Like, if other coaches are going to be talking to these players, you'd be a fool not to jump in there, right? Like,
Yeah.
being last is not a good strategy.
No,
So,
people like having jobs in general.
yeah, that's right. That's right. But think about this. Stanford, one of the finest institutions in the world, has a 2025 verbal commit. This kid is committed to Stanford University. He does not have a grade in high school yet. He hasn't even, he has no grade for his high school career. And we already know he's going to Stanford. I mean, so I think what happened, I'm not a believer in overregulation, because the problem, and this is the problem the NCAA's got themselves into, they have all these stupid rules, and then you got to spend all these resources enforcing them.
Forcing
And then
them,
you,
yeah.
and then you've got to adjust them. And so I would like simpler rules, and let's just keep the main thing. But this is kind of how I posed my column is, okay, let's try to be objective about this system. Let's just look at all the different people involved, and there's got to be somebody that it's working for, right? Well, let's think about the families. Is it good? I don't have children, but is it good that a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old is being asked to make a college choice? Is that an ideal age to make a college choice? Right. I'm leading the witness, right? But no, of course not, right? It's a those
And you may not
it's a
have kids, but
joke.
you were 14 and you played college baseball, and you knew that wasn't the right time to decide.
Right. Right. And so think about now the college coach. Like, is this good for the college coach? Like, is 15 years old the ideal time to make a mental and baseball evaluation of a kid? Of course not. Do coaches like talking to 15-year-olds? Of course not. And think about, I heard a story recently about, a coach, a college coach, prominent D1 coach, Omaha caliber program, where they had two players in for an unofficial visit. One player was 14. The other player was 20 because he was a junior college recruit. So, and they had to schedule the whole weekend to make sure these two kids did not meet each other. Because
Right.
could you imagine? Like, they have zero in common. And
Right.
so the poor college coaches are just throwing darts. They're, recruiting one grade at a time is super stressful. I can't even imagine recruiting 5 grades at a time. You're getting these verbal agreements, and the whole thing boils down to this, Olsh, is we have loopholes in the rule. The biggest one is the coach can't call the recruit, but the recruit can call the coach. We have these arranged phone calls. So what I proposed is we go to softball. Softball, their early recruiting was even more ludicrous than ours is right now, because they have basically full scholarships to offer. The girls mature so much more
Players
quickly.
develop, sure.
Yeah, and there's no draft. So when you sign them, right? And
Right.
so theirs was completely out of control. And so they did a hard stop, and they did it in 2018. That's the biggest point to me, Olsh, is it's not like the softball system is brand new and we're hoping that it's working for them. I mean, we're basically 4 years into their new system and it's working. And so I don't know. I think we've got a system that doesn't work. It's going to take some courage to change it. There's always fear, and you mentioned the law of unintended consequences. We always have to be aware of that. But I just think our system right now. Here's the reason I'm most passionate about it, Olsh, is I think it's a black eye for our sport. The athletic directors have kids, and they have 14 and 15-year-old kids, and they look at us and they think, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
What this is not, this is not right, and that you keep doing it." And so, yeah, I'm passionate about that. I think I think we're making a big mistake if we stay on this road.
No, I think it helps the game to correct, and I think what you suggested is really about the only logical way to go from here. And
Hmm.
I don't think you'll get resistance from coaches.
Certainly not assistant coaches. The assistant coaches that
That's
are,
right.
now again, I like, in fairness to the head coaches, if you're a head coach right now whose program is really humming, you mentioned it,
Yeah.
like those guys want to keep their jobs, and so any change
Right.
is nerve wracking. But again, we can look at softball, and 5 years ago when they were recruiting 7th graders, Oklahoma was awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't see any big shift in power over the last 4 years.
No. And you know what? You know what the truth is? the big schools are going to get the best players
Right.
if they continue to put the work in, and they
Right.
are. So yeah, I think it's I get that change is scary, but sometimes you just got to kind of take a deep breath and go for it.
You mentioned you really have a chance to kind of do your dream job and be a mouthpiece for college baseball and the great game that it is to America. Um, you get to, the weekend of the not regionals weekend of the NCAA tournament. You get to do the great, round the clock coverage.
Squeeze play, yes, it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Tell us about how crazy and fun that is, and how much coffee you need to go through in order to make that work. And it's
Yeah.
just seems like it's like you're at a bar watching a game.
Yeah, it's so fun. It is so fun. It used to be called bases loaded. Now we call it squeeze play. The only downside was usually
Nobody watches that anymore though, so we got to change that name, right?
That's a good point. That is a great
Football
point.
game.
Yeah. So, the only downside was the table you sit behind. Usually, it's you can't see through the table. So this year they put us in a studio where you could see through the table, and like you're dressed. You're trying to dress comfortable. I'm wearing my New Balances and Dockers, and people are giving me a really hard time about that. But I'm certainly not wearing a full blown suit for for
No,
those that it's because it's long, but it is so cool. Here's what it reminds me of. When I was in my 20s and I'm the head coach at Malvern Prep, in the fall, all of our buddies are playing fantasy football. And Sunday mornings, my good friend Tim Kearns has a place over in that area near somewhat, I guess Collegeville we'll call it, called Triple Crown Academy. And so I would go do lessons on Sunday mornings. And then right after the lessons, we'd all go to Gators in Valley Forge, and we watch the NFL games all day and with our fantasy football teams. And so that's what squeeze play is to me. Like the regional round is so awesome. It's like it's the prize from the regular season. And that's what it always feels like to me. It's like we have every game up. It's awesome. I get to work with these incredible hosts, Matt Schick and Chris Budden, who are, amazing. And then we're just watching the games and we're just mic'd up, so it's so fun. It's, the regional round is a complete blast. And now it is, I will tell you, like these are long days, right? Like it's because, the regionals are scheduled across 3 time zones.
Yeah.
And so it's, you asked how much.
Noon,
say it again.
11 o'clock to what, 2 or 3 in the morning usually, right?
Yeah, it can be. Usually though, at the end of the night, when the West Coast games kick off, we usually, once they get into the second or third inning, we usually kill it at that point because there's no games to go back and forth from. But then that's where what I need to do is then go back to the hotel and go to bed. But I usually stay up and watch that game because, you're captivated
You're
by
wired
it. So,
at that point, sure.
Yeah, but they have an awesome cafeteria at ESPN, and so I'm probably like 2 to 3 venti iced coffees, and we're good to go. It's so fun. It is definitely my favorite weekend of the year.
And you've got a great appreciation of Scott Hansen in the NFL Red Zone from too, right?
That's right.
Every week for him, and he can't take a break. You can at least take a break, right?
That's right. Yeah, he goes solo, doesn't he? Or does he have some? Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah,
most insane job in sports.
That is nuts.
Well, again, here with Mike Rooney, ESPN, D1 baseball. As I say, college baseball's premier analyst. He can be as humble as he wants, but crystal ball 2022. Anything that comes to mind at this point?
Yeah, I would say here's something that's really interesting to me is if you looked at our freshman All-American team for the position players last year, I mean, it was breathtaking how much talent there was from a position player standpoint, and kids that came in. Like I'm thinking about Jacob Berry, who's now going to LSU. He transferred from Arizona to LSU, but this kid comes in true freshman, switch hitter, hitting in the middle of the lineup for an Omaha team, 17 home runs, 70 RBIs. I mean, we hadn't seen true freshman hitters do that in a long time, and there were so many of them. I think about Brock Wilkin at Wake Forest, and I mean, the list goes on and on. But I'll tell you where we were deficient last year in the freshman class. The pitching was not very good. And so I think that's what's that's what makes this year so fascinating to me is you start thinking about, okay, who's really got pitching? And I think the pandemic probably hurt pitchers more than anybody, meaning they just went out and built velocity, but didn't get any repetitions. Right. And so, college hitters, all hitters have proven to us over and over again that it doesn't matter how hard you throw if it's down the middle and an advantage counts. And so I think that's one of the things also that I'm really intrigued by in 2022 is I'm really intrigued to see who's got pitching, because we don't have these like marquee names, not like we did last year with Rocker and Leiter and Ty Madden. And, there were so many big time arms that were coming back last year. And so, I probably always say this, but I do feel like this is not a year where Omaha is just going to be blue blood central. I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of teams. I don't see, these dominant teams out here like we had last year, but boy, it's going to be interesting. I don't know. That's my favorite part of the fall is I feel like this is the time where the summer, you get the draft and you start to say, okay, this team got crushed in the draft. This team did really well. So that kind of gets you geeked up. And then you get the fall ball, you start talking to coaches, because that's when the first round of bullets start flying and you start to figure out, okay, like who's adjusting to college, who's not. So I'm excited for fall ball. This is one of my favorite times of the year.
We'll finish with this here one, and it might not be the easiest it's been probably a few years, but one great New Jersey baseball story that you can think of from your days.
Yeah, so I would say my favorite New Jersey baseball story. So when I was the head coach at Malvern Prep, we would always go play in the Bishop Eustace tournament. And it was a great tournament. Like it would be us and St. Joe Prep a lot of years. Millville, Mike Trout's Millville. Now I didn't get to coach against Mike Trout, but Millville would be in the tournament, and then Eustis. And Eustis was, Malvern has got a great program now, like a national program. And we were kind of on our way when I was there, but Mike Hickey after me, and then Freddie Hilliard now, those guys just kept ratcheting it up. But back then it felt like us and Eustis would play in the finals all the time. And I'll never forget in 98, and Sam Tropiano, I mean, they were so good.
Trope was still coach back then too. I mean,
yes.
That's a, one of the legendary Jersey figures himself.
Oh, no question. He was so good. And they when you play a Jersey team now, like there's going to be some volume, right? Like there's going to be some chipping at each other. And so in 98 at Malvern, we had a first round pick, Josh McKinley, our shortstop, went 11th overall the Expos. Well, Eustis had a big time arm, Mark Sauer, who I think was a really high pick, maybe a fourth rounder of the Marlins or something like that. And so he's pitching against us. And, it was really chippy. And, Josh had a big reputation. And so, I'll never forget Josh hit a foul home run. Sauer then threw a ball behind him. And then 2 pitches later, Josh hits a ground rule double out onto whatever that highway is beyond Eustis's field. And I mean, Sauer and Josh, I mean, the chirping, it was electric. And so we always loved playing that tournament. I never got to win it, but those guys after me have won it a few times. But that whenever I think of New Jersey baseball, that's one of my favorite memories.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, again, we're here with Runes, Mike Rooney. Thank you for your time today. We certainly appreciate it, and hope to have you back sometime when we get a little closer to baseball season.
Anytime. Oh, so this was super fun, and I love what you're doing here. This is really cool.
Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up.